Yes, Mataji, over to you.
Thank you. So, today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 12, verses 8 and 9. So, this is verse 8. Angushtamatram amalam puratamaulinam api vyadarshanam shyamam taded vasasamachyutam. Translation: He, the Lord, was only thumb high, but he was all transcendental. He had a very beautiful, blackish, infallible body, and he wore a dress of lightning yellow and a helmet of blazing gold. Thus he was seen by the child. Verse 9. Srimad Dirgha Chaturbahum Tapta Kanchana Kundalam Shatajaksham Gadapanim Atmanah Sarvato Disham Paribhramantam Ulkabham Dhamayantam Gadam Muhu. Translation: The Lord was enriched with 4 hands, earrings of molten gold, and eyes blood red with fury. As he loitered about, his club constantly encircled him like a shooting star. Purport: It is said in the Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, that the Supreme Lord Govinda, by his one plenary portion, enters into the halo of the universe and distributes himself as Paramatma, or the Supersoul, not only within the heart of every living being, but also within every atom of the material elements. Thus the Lord is all-pervading by his inconceivable potency. And thus he entered the womb of Uttara to save his beloved devotee, Maharaj Parikshit. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:31, the Lord assured everyone that his devotees are never to be vanquished. No one can kill a devotee of the Lord because he is protected by the Lord, and no one can save a person whom the Lord desires to kill. The Lord is all-powerful, and therefore he can both save and kill as he likes. He became visible to his devotee Maharaj Parikshit even in that awkward position in the womb of his mother, in a shape just suitable for his vision, that is Parikshit Maharaj's vision. The Lord can become bigger than thousands of universes and can become smaller than an atom at the same time. Merciful as he is, he becomes just suitable to the vision of the limited living being. He is unlimited. He is not limited by any measurement of our calculation. He can become bigger than what we can think of, and he can become smaller than what we can conceive. But in all circumstances, he is the same all-powerful Lord. There is no difference between the thumb-like Vishnu in the womb of Uttara and the full-fledged Narayan in the Vaikuntha Dham, the kingdom of Godhead. He accepts the form of Archa Vigraha, worshipable deity, just to accept service from his different incapable devotees. By the mercy of the Archa Vigraha, the form of the Lord in material elements, the devotees who are in the material world can easily approach the Lord, although he is not conceivable by the material senses. The Archa Vigraha is therefore an all-spiritual form of the Lord to be perceived by the material devotees. Such an Archa Vigraha of the Lord is never to be considered material. There is no difference between matter and spirit for the Lord, although there is a gulf of difference between the two in the case of the conditioned living being. For the Lord, there is nothing but spiritual existence, and similarly, there is nothing except spiritual existence for the pure devotee of the Lord in his intimate relation with the Lord. Om Atyantimirandhasya Jnananjanashlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Mancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Mataji, would it be okay if I share the screen then? Okay, it says, yeah, okay. Yeah. There are many, Prabhupada covers many philosophical jewels. in this purport to verse 9, and verse 8 is, of course, a continuation from the previous verses where Lord Krishna has now appeared to protect Maharaj Parikshit, the last heir of the Pandav line from the Brahmastra unleashed by Ashwatthama. And so we see that the Lord has now entered Uttara's womb and he's encircling. And Parikshit Maharaj, the baby Parikshit Maharaj, he's actually able to have darshan of the Lord with his own eyes. And then the next verse describes the Lord's form, his four arms, his weapons, and Prabhupada describes various philosophical points in the purport. So I basically chose these four to discuss in today's class. The first is the Lord's Paramatma feature. Prabhupada talks about that. Then this famous aphorism, Bengali aphorism from Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is Rakhe Krishna Mare Ke, Mare Krishna Rakhe Ke, which Prabhupada paraphrases in English in today's purport, that if Krishna wants to protect someone, no one can destroy that person. And if Krishna decides to destroy someone, no one can save that person. And then Prabhupada makes this point that the Lord becomes just suitable to the vision of the limited living being. So I thought to discuss that. And also nothing but spiritual existence exists for the Lord and his pure devotee. So yeah, basically we'll run through these 4 points in today's class. So the first point, which is the Lord's Paramatma feature, we see that one of the famous verses of the Bhagavatam where we get a clear delineation of the 3 features of the Lord, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. This appears in Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 2, verse 11, where Shukdev Goswami states, Vadanti tattva vidas tattvam yaj jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. That learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. So here, one of the key terms in this verse is this Yaj Jnanam Advayam, which Prabhupada translates here as the non-dual substance. And why this is significant is because this particular term clarifies many, many misconceptions and apparent contradictions between the various descriptions of God that we find in different philosophical and theological traditions. For example, in some cases, there is the concept that God is situated in heaven. We are here in this world, and the sinners, they are sent to hell. So there is this clear categorization of heaven and this world and the hell. But then if God is situated in heaven, then how do we reconcile it with another philosophical conception, which is that God is omnipresent, which means that he is present everywhere. So these two appear contradictory. How can God be situated in one place, in heaven, or what we call the spiritual world? And then he's also all-pervading, he's omnipresent. Which of the two is it? And some people argue that, yes, he is only omnipresent. There is no personal form of the Lord who is situated as a person in the spiritual world. God is everyone and everything. I am God, you are God, everything is God. It is just that we have forgotten that we are God. And once we come out of this illusion, everyone will become God again. So this is one conception which we call the Mayavad conception. Then there are some who argue that no, God is so holy, so sacred, so above everything material that he cannot possibly come in contact with the material nature in any circumstance. They say that God is transcendent. So yeah, he is situated up above in the spiritual world, in heaven, or whatever the term may be. And we are here in this material world, and God does not come here. God cannot manifest himself here because this is a very contaminated place. This is the material world, and God is transcendental. So this is another limited conception of God, because here again, we are placing a limitation on God, basically. According to us, because God is very pure and this material world is contaminated, so there is something which God cannot do, which is that God cannot come here in this material world. Similarly, the Mayavadis, they're also imposing a limitation on God, that yes, God is omnipresent, which means that he cannot at the same time exist as an individual person in the spiritual world. So in all these cases, we see that basically it is us human beings who are using our material reasoning, and based on that, we come to some conceptions of what God can do and what God cannot do, what is possible for God and what is not possible for God. And so here in the Bhagavatam and Lord Chaitanya's perfect philosophical reconciliation of all the Vaishnava Sampradaya's philosophical points, which is the Achintya Bheda Bhed Tattva, that very effectively resolves all of these different contradictions. And it tells us that actually God is above all these puny limitations that we living entities impose upon. Yes, he is situated in the spiritual world, but yes, he is at the same time omnipresent, present everywhere in this material world. Yes, he is transcendental. Material contamination can never touch him, but at the same time, yes, he can manifest himself in this material world to make himself accessible to the devotees who are at present in material bodies and who have material eyes and material hands and legs, and who have no choice but to use these material instruments to serve the Lord. So that is the true omnipotence of the Lord that we get from the Bhagavatam's conception of God. And this all is, in one sense, revealed in this very key term, which is non-dual substance, Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. So basically what is being stated in this verse, very interesting, that it is not that Brahman and Paramatma and Bhagavan, it's not that they are three different entities or they are three different categories. Basically, it is the one same person. But then why are they manifest in these three different ways is because of the level of qualification of the sadhaka or the devotee or the jnani or the yogi. It is the sadhaka's vision, the sadhaka's level of qualification, which determines which aspect of the Lord he will perceive. It is the same Lord, he has three different aspects. And so the impersonalists, they manage to perceive only up till the Brahman aspect of the Lord. Then those who are more advanced, they manage to perceive both the Brahman and the Paramatma aspect of the Lord. And those who are still more advanced, which is the devotees, who, as Krishna says, yoginamapi sarvesham, so the topmost yogis, higher than the dhyanis, higher than the jnanis, the yogis, they perceive all the three aspects of the Lord, the Brahman, the Paramatma, or the Bhagavan, and Bhagavan, all three aspects. So same Bhagavan, three different aspects. Based on one's own qualification, one perceives the Lord as Brahman, or as Brahman and Paramatma, or as Brahman, Paramatma, as well as Bhagavan. And Prabhupada gives this very nice example of this. For one thing, before the example, one thing we see this famous verse from the Vishnu Puran, which very effectively illustrates these three aspects, which is Ekadesha Sthitasya Agnir Jyotsna Vistarani Yatha Parasya Brahmana Shaktis Tathedam Akhilam Jagat. That fire is situated in one place, but it distributes heat and light. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is distributing his energies in different ways. So yeah, that's one thing. Fire is one thing which, if we put our hand into it, it gets burnt. Fire is localized in one certain place. We light a candle and the candle has a flame, that's fire. But also we can see the extension of fire in the form of heat and light. And that is also an energy of fire. In one sense, it is inseparable from fire because you cannot light a flame without producing heat and light. There cannot be flame without light and heat. And at the same time, heat and light are not fire. I can warm my hands near a fireplace, but if I put my finger into the fire, I'll get burnt. So there is a difference between the warmth of fire and fire itself, but at the same time, they cannot be separated. And that is what is this Advaya Gyan, this non-dual substance, that yes, there is simultaneous oneness and difference. Just as fire, heat, and light, they are simultaneously one because they cannot be separated, and at the same time, they are different because there is a difference between warming our hands at a fireplace and putting our hand into the flame and getting burned. And this distinction is, as I mentioned before, it is based on the level of qualification of the practitioner. And so this Prabhupada illustrates by a very good example, it brings out this point very clearly, which is the examples of mountains. seen from a distance. So when we see mountains from a great distance, they appear these, hazy blue gray mountains. We cannot make out any details, what's going on in the mountains, just a misty gray blue thing. Then so this can be likened to the Brahman feature of the Lord. And then we come to the Paramatma feature. When one comes closer to the mountains, one can start to distinguish some details. One can see trees and plants, and there are some colors. It's not just all gray and blue. One can see other colors, green and brown, and details of the greenery, the forest, the vegetation. So this is like the Paramatma feature. So has the mountain changed? No, the mountain has not changed, but the person has now advanced. Earlier, he was situated at a great distance from the mountain, but now the person has drawn closer to the mountain. So he is able to see more details of the mountain. And then finally, we have the Bhagavan feature, which can be likened to this. When one comes even closer, one can see that, okay, there are people living on the mountains. There's a whole village situated on the mountain, and there are houses and people residing in it, and water pumps and wells, and so many other things. People trying out foodstuffs, people doing farming, so many other details. So this is the Bhagavan feature of the Lord. This is available to the person who is standing closest to the mountain, and he has most access to all these detailed intricacies of what is there on the mountain. So similarly, we have these Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan features. And the most advanced yogis, who are the bhaktas or the devotees, they have access to all these details about that absolute truth. They come to know what he looks like, what he does for fun, who are his friends and relatives, what he does in the spiritual world at home. They get access to all these intimate details of the Lord. And so here, as Prabhupada points out, this verse is specifically highlighting the Paramatma feature, or this middle feature of the Lord, as perceived by the sadhaka. And Prabhupada mentions this particular verse from the Brahma Samhita in today's purport, where Lord Brahma says, Ekopyasau rachaitum jagadanda kotim, yachakti rasti jagadanda chaya yadantaha, andantarastham paramanu chayantarastham, govindamadi purushottamaham bhajami. So this andantarastha paramanu chayantarastham, that I worship the personality of Godhead Govinda, who by one of his plenary portions enters into the existence of every universe and every particle of the atoms, and thus unlimitedly manifests his infinite energy all over the material creation. So yes, Govinda, he is that one personality of Godhead. He is situated in the spiritual world, but by just one, he's so powerful that just by one of his plenary portions, he enters into the existence of every universe and every particle of the atoms. So as Prabhupada points out in today's purport, that he is not only situated within the hearts of every living being, but he's also situated within every atom of dead matter. He's just situated everywhere. There's no place where there's no God. He's everywhere, and thus unlimitedly manifests his infinite energy. Just as a bonfire, a big, powerful bonfire, it extends its heat and light over a very, very large area. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of God, and he unlimitedly manifests his infinite energy all over the material world, while at the same time remaining as an individual person in the spiritual world. So this feature by which the Lord manifests himself in the material creation, that is the Paramatma feature, and that is the feature that Parikshit Maharaj saw when the Lord came to protect him from the Brahmastra. And what then does the Lord do as the Paramatma? What are the functions that he performs in his role as Paramatma? The Bhagavad Gita gives us some insights into this. With one of these is this famous verse, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hrideshe Junadishtati Ramayan Sarva Bhutani Yantra Rodhani Maya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjun, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities, who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. So he is the one who is directing the wanderings of all living entities. Then another verse very famous, again from the Gita, Upadrashtanu mantacha bharta bhokta maheshwaraha paramatmeti chapyukto tehesmin purusha para. Yet in this body, there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter, and who is known as the supersoul. So yeah, Upadrashta, which is the overseer and permitter, Anumanta. And then, of course, again, another very famous verse, Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sanivishto Mattahas Vrida Jnanam Apohanam. Krishna says, I'm seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So in one sense, yeah, the things that are described in these verses, they are very interrelated. So we can see that it is Krishna who is the cause of remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. And in this way, as he says here, he directs the wanderings of all living entities, because we have all these unfulfilled desires, which we are trying to fulfill in this material world. And Krishna, because he respects our free will, he allows us to fulfill these desires. But how do we even remember these desires? Is because Krishna, who is seated in our hearts as Paramatma, he gives us the remembrance and the knowledge of those desires that, okay, you wanted this, here's an opportunity to fulfill your desire. I've given you free will, okay, go ahead, fulfill this desire. So this happens because of this function. And this way, he directs the wanderings of all living entities. Because otherwise, each time that a living entity quits one material body and enters into a different material body, then we forget everything that happened in the previous lifetime. So how would we ever remember anything? But our tendencies, our inclinations, our unfulfilled desires, they still continue to direct our wanderings life after life. And that continuity is maintained by the Paramatma teacher. He gives us this remembrance, even though we are not consciously aware of it, but he gives us this remembrance. And in this way, directs the wandering. And then he also exists as the overseer. We are wandering, we are trying to fulfill all our desires, and he is watching over us constantly. Not only just as a person who keeps record of all our good deeds and bad deeds, not just for that purpose, but also to keep reminding us wherever there's an opportunity that here's a chance to come back to Krishna, here's a chance to come back to Krishna. So he keeps watch over us through all the species that we rotate in this material world. Even when we are in the body of a pig or an insect or some lowly form of life, even then, Krishna, as the Paramatma teacher, Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, he's accompanying us and keeping watch over us and constantly giving us opportunities to come back to him. And he's also the permitter, because, yeah, again, we may have so many desires, but unless Krishna sanctions something, we cannot enact any of those activities by ourselves, because we literally have no capability, no power of our own. So it is the Paramatma who keeps track of our activities and desires. He reminds us of our desires, and he also permits us to fulfill our desires, to act in the ways that we want to. And at the same time, he keeps trying to give us opportunities to turn back to him. So an extremely compassionate feature of the Lord, extremely compassionate, and also something which is very reassuring to know that, yes, at any point of time, one is never alone. Like the Lord himself is actually present within us, within each and every living entity. Like there's absolutely no question of a living entity is ever being alone at any point of time. The Lord is always available, and he is always wanting that we turn back to him. So as soon as we consciously develop a desire to turn back to him and consult him and seek guidance from him, he's always available there to give us guidance, to give us direction on what we can do to elevate our existence and come closer to him. And that is why this Paramatma feature of the Lord is also called the Chaitya Guru, because we have different gurus. There's the Diksha Guru, the Shiksha Guru. Then there's also Chaitya Guru, which is the Lord as Paramatma. He also constantly gives us guidance. He cautions us when we are inclined to perform something wrong. It's in the material world, it's often called the voice of conscience. So that voice of conscience is actually nothing but the Paramatma, who tries to stop us from our wrongdoings and who also gives us opportunities when we seek guidance from him. He gives us opportunities to try to rectify our wrongs and to come closer to him. So yeah, this is one feature that I thought there's one point that I thought to discuss from today's purport. And moving on, okay, yeah, we can conclude with this excerpt from Srimad Bhagavatam 8.3.17 purport. Prabhupada is saying here regarding the Paramatma that only Krishna can deliver us from this material existence. Indeed, he's always trying to deliver us. And then this is very noteworthy. Prabhupada says that he is within our hearts and is not at all inattentive. His only aim is to deliver us from material life. And then this part, that it is not that he becomes attentive to us only when we offer prayers to him. Even before we offer our prayers, he incessantly tries to deliver us. He is never lazy in regard to our deliverance. Therefore, this verse says, Puri Karunaya Namo Layaya. This is from Gajendra's prayers to the Lord. So yeah, this is very significant that it is not only that when we turn to the Lord, so he reciprocates. He is actually proactive, and he is always proactively already trying to elevate every living entity. Even before our prayers, he tries to deliver. So yeah, that's one of the Lord's very, very compassionate features, the Paramatma, our best friend, our constant companion, and someone whom we can always turn to for guidance. Then moving on to Rakhe Krishna Mare Ke, Mare Krishna Rakhe Ke, very famous phrase from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which means if Krishna decides to protect someone, no one can destroy that person. And if Krishna decides to kill someone, no one can save that person, which is, of course, befitting the Almighty Lord, because who can violate the desires of the all-powerful Lord? And we have, of course, so many examples from our Shastras and also from devotees' experiences regarding the truth of this statement. One thing is we get this beautiful verse from Prahlad Maharaj's prayers in this regard from Srimad Bhagavatam 7.9.19, where he points out that Balasya Neha Sharanam Pitarau Nrisimha Nardasya Chagadamudanvati Majato No Taptasya Tat Pratividhirya Ihanjaseshtas Tavad Vidho Tanupitam Tvadupekshitan. So Prahlad Maharaj is saying here that, O Lord Nrsimhadev, O Supreme, because of a bodily conception of life, embodied souls neglected and not cared for by you cannot do anything for their betterment. Whatever remedies they accept, although perhaps temporarily beneficial, are certainly impermanent. For example, a father and mother cannot protect their child. A physician and medicine cannot relieve a suffering patient. And a boat on the ocean cannot protect. Sorry. Yeah. And a boat on the ocean cannot protect a drowning man. So yeah, in one sense, it may seem surprising and even a bit contradictory. That what do you mean a father and mother cannot protect their child, or a physician and medicine cannot relieve a patient, or both cannot protect a drowning man? Of course they can. And we see that all the time. And does it mean that we want people to denounce the role of father and mother, or the role of physician and medicine, or the role of a boat to protect a drowning man? No, that's not the case. But it's also undeniable when we look at it, when we even, just glance at the daily newspaper, for example. We see incidents which make it so clear that, yes, although these things are necessary, parental care is necessary, but it is not sufficient. A physician and medicine, they are necessary. Yes, it is necessary to go to a doctor and to get medicine, but it's not sufficient. A boat, yes, it is necessary. A ship, it's necessary to cross an ocean, but it is not sufficient, because otherwise, why are there so many cases where despite the best parental care, a child perishes, or despite the best medical care, a patient perishes, or despite, for the boat, one of the most, famous or notorious, whatever we may say, examples is the Titanic, right? And in that era, It was like the most impeccable ship, the most flawless ship, the fastest, the strongest, the most technologically advanced ship. The ship which they believe like it's humanly impossible to sink it. It just cannot sink. There is nothing wrong with this ship. How can it sink? And it sinks in its very first voyage, its maiden voyage. So even a glance at a daily newspaper can attest to the truth of this statement by Prahlad Maharaj, that yes, material measures, they are necessary, but they are not sufficient. We need something else, and that something else is the all-powerful Lord. Unless he sanctions, nothing can protect anyone. And when he decides to protect someone, then even if all the material odds are against a person, the person is saved. And of course, Prahlad Maharaj himself was the best example of this. He was this apparently powerless 5-year-old child and pitted against his all-powerful father, who had acquired all sorts of benedictions from Lord Brahma. He had all the demigods, the entire universe practically under his sway. And yet it is Hiranyakashipu who ends up being killed and Prahlad Maharaj who ends up being saved. We have the Pandavas, 7 Akshohinis of the Pandavas versus 11 Akshohinis of the Kauravas. And also, I mean, if you look at it, the deal that Duryodhan made with Krishna was, Krishna, I want all your army, all your Narayani Sena, Krishna's infallible army. And here on the other side, Arjun has Krishna, and Krishna has taken a vow not to take up any weapons, literally. And still, which side ends up winning? It is the Pandavas. So yeah, it all is just undeniable proof of this fact that we can never repose our faith in material measures. Yes, we adopt material measures. It is our duty to adopt material measures for our welfare because we are living in this material world and we have to respect the laws of the material world. But our faith and dependence, we need to repose that in Krishna. We abide by the laws of the material world, but we depend for protection on Krishna. We don't think that it is that medicine, or it is this relative, or this parent, or this education, or my money, or just anything material that's going to save me. I may try to accumulate all these things. I may try to follow all the rules of material existence properly in order to respect Krishna's material laws. But at the same time, I know that none of these things are actually going to be my savior. Even in material danger, even in times of material danger, it is actually only Krishna who is going to be my savior. That's basically the balanced attitude of a devotee. That yes, he does not neglect the material side, but he knows that the material side actually cannot protect him. It is actually Krishna who is the real savior. And so yes, Prabhupada says here, through parental care, through remedies for different kinds of disease, and through means of protection on the water, in the air, and on land, there is always an endeavor for relief from various kinds of suffering. But none of them are guaranteed measures for protection. Ultimately, the shelter is the Lord, and one who takes shelter of the Lord is protected. This is guaranteed. So basically, the only guarantee that exists is Krishna, no one else. And then this concluding point, which is that the Lord becomes just suitable to the vision of the limited being, which again goes back to our first point regarding that, yes, we cannot impose limitations on the Lord, that he cannot come to the material, he cannot adopt a material form. No, the Lord, he's all powerful, he can do whatever he likes. And so because he is very compassionate, so he often takes forms which are suitable to the vision of the limited living being. And Prabhupada gives the example of the Archa Vigra in this case. So we have material vision, we have material arms and legs. We don't have a spiritual body. How can we serve the Lord? So the Lord makes himself available in Archa Vigra, which is made of material elements. But actually, it is not material. And the science behind this is that matter and spirit, both are the Lord's energies. So when the Lord wants, he can infuse his presence even into matter. And when he does that, it is no longer matter, it becomes spirit. So again, it's a paradox. It's achintya bheda bhed. Yes, it is matter, and that is why we are able to handle it and we are able to offer service. But at the same time, actually, it is not matter, because the Lord is transcendental. And when he manifests himself into material elements, those material elements become spiritual. And that is the science basically behind everything. I mean, our Srimad Bhagavatam, it is basically just, if we look at it, it's just paper, right? But it is not paper. It is the Bhagavatam. It is Bhagavad Puran, and it is not different from Krishna. Why? Because Krishna's sound vibration is imprinted here, and therefore it becomes non-different from Krishna. Similarly, Mahaprasad, before the food is offered to Krishna, it is just ordinary food. But as soon as we offer it to Krishna, it becomes holy, it becomes sacred. And it has this extremely powerful spiritual potency, because now it has contacted the spiritual, it has contacted Krishna. And this was Prabhupada's basically his plan for the entire material world. This is any pure devotee's plan for, and a vision for the entire material world, to spiritualize the entire material world, so that at one point there will no longer remain any material world. It will just, everything will be the spiritual world. So this is a very famous verse from the, from the Vishnu Puran, I think. I'll need to double check that, I'm sorry. Yeah, most likely it's from the Vishnu Puran, where the Lord says, Naham tishtami vaikunthe, yoginam hridayeshu va, yatra gayanti mad bhaktaha, tatra tishtami narada. The Lord says, I'm not in Vaikuntha, nor in the hearts of the yogis. I remain where my devotees engage in glorifying my activities. And then Prabhupada, he writes in the purport that when the pure devotees assemble to chant, hear, and talk about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the place where they assemble becomes Vaikuntha. For the devotee, there is no need to pray to the Lord for transferal to the Vaikuntha world. A pure devotee can create Vaikuntha or Vrindavan anywhere simply by chanting the glories of the Lord without offense. And that was basically Prabhupada's mission. I mean, that is why a Mahabhagavat like Prabhupada, he left Vrindavan and went to the West. Like, it seems such a puzzling, such a paradoxical decision. Why would a pure devotee want to leave Vrindavan and go to such a place? But it is because of this very science of Krishna consciousness. As Prabhupada writes here, because of the presence of the Lord in the form of transcendental vibration, the Vaikuntha atmosphere is evil. This atmosphere is without fear and anxiety. Shranvatam Swakatha Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana. Thus, his material hankerings immediately stop. This Sankirtan movement, started by the Society for Krishna Consciousness, is meant for creating Vaikuntha, the transcendental world that is without anxiety, even in this material world. The method is the propagation of the Shravanam Kirtana process throughout the world. So that was, that was the sum and substance of Prabhupada's mission. And that was the purpose for which he created our movement, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And that was basically the reason why he left Vrindavan at that age and went touring all over the world, all over the globe, because of his faith in this science of Krishna consciousness, that Krishna is spiritual, Krishna's name is non-different from him, therefore Krishna's name is also spiritual. And by the power of that spiritual holy name, the entire material world can become spiritualized. And that was Prabhupada's vision. That is the legacy that he wanted all of us, his followers, to continue. So thank you so much, Fatima Mataji. I'll conclude my class here.
Jay. Thank you so much. What a wonderful class and such a nice explanation of the verse, of the Lord's beauty and the three features of the Lord. Thank you so much, Gopika Radhika Mataji. Devotees, please, if you have any questions, comments, realizations, please unmute yourself and ask. You can type it in the chat and I can read it for you. And it'll be nice to take your darshan as well. So if you can keep your cameras off on too. Thank you. Raj Prabhu, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj, All glories to all of the devotees here. Thank you. That was a wonderful class. So many interesting things. I have so many questions. So I hope we can go on for a few hours so that I can ask them all. First one was, I want to learn more about this. You frequently mentioned about desires, and thinking about desires and think actually desires is a more complex subject, and I'd like to learn more, because you have things like you have the intensity of the desire, could be very tiny or could be very high. You have layers of desire, because you could have, you want something, but that's the subject of a more deep-rooted desire, which could be a subject of an even more deep-rooted desire. So there are lots of factors involved in desire. So I wonder if you can either teach me something about desires or refer me to somewhere I can learn about desires, or both.
Okay. Is there like any specific aspect of desires that you would like me to particularly address here? Because yeah, like you said, it is a broad topic.
Yeah, I guess it's more about how do desires work, and how, gosh, it's such a vast area. So even when you think about it, you think you've got desires in any of the material modes, and then a mixture of the modes, and a desire in a spiritual, transcendental desires, and a mix of both, and then combined. It's like such a vast area. I just want to learn like the different facets of desire and how the whole thing hangs together.
Yeah, I guess in an overarching sense, perhaps we could say, because as Prabhupada often pointed out, for one thing, desire is basically intrinsic to the spirit soul. Just as consciousness is one of the intrinsic qualities of the spirit soul, similarly, desire is also one of the intrinsic qualities of the spirit soul, and like the impersonalist conception. So I guess, so that we can say is one point, that, okay, I'm a spirit soul, that means I have to desire something. And then I guess Chaitanya Charitamrita draws this distinction between these two broad kinds of desires. One is the desire for Krishna's pleasure, which is called prema, just in a very broad sense, that is the category. And then the other is the opposite desire, the desire for my gratification, which the Chaitanya Charitamrita calls lust. So there is love and lust. These are the two very broad categorizations of desire. And then I guess, because we obviously are in the material world, so we fall in the second category. So here then, as Krishna points out in the 15th chapter, right, the banyan tree, it's upside down. So here everything then becomes perverted. Those same desires, pure desires of the spirit soul, they get manifested in all these ugly, perverted forms in the material world. Through, as you said, various combinations of the modes of material nature. And primarily because I guess the core, yes, the forms may be different and the permutations, combinations may be different, but I guess the core lies, the core is basically selfishness as opposed to selflessness, I guess. In the material world, there's this, the underlying feature is selfishness and the tendency to want to exploit others, whether it's other people or other things, for my own sake. I guess maybe that is the core, we can say. And then how it manifests, it then depends based on our association with different modes and all the baggage from our different lifetimes that we are carrying. And as you rightly pointed out, the layers of desires, one desire leads to another, which leads to another. And so all these shades. But I guess, yeah, the kernel is this. It's the exploitative mentality versus the selfless mentality in the spiritual world. And then, of course, when we become practitioners, then we have, again, a difficult situation where some of our desires become spiritualized, but at the same time, we are struggling with our material desires also. So sometimes it can be a bit hard to distinguish between the two. A desire may seem spiritual, but maybe at a deeper level, it does have some selfish motive to it. I may be doing a particular service but at the same time, I may also have a material motivation to be doing that. Like I've seen that in my case, in many instances. If I look deeper, why am I doing it? Actually, it's not so selfless. It's not just about Krishna. I also stand to gain something from it. I also, sometimes it can even just be that I even just enjoy that activity at a material level. Like I like to study, and maybe that is why I'm reading the Bhagavatam. It's not necessarily that I'm doing it because I relish Krishna Katha or because I want to please Krishna. It's just that I like to study and analyze things, and that is why I'm doing this. So yeah, sometimes it kind of becomes a mixture. And that is why I think the Vedic scriptures, we see that they do understand and acknowledge this fact. And that is why they have so many different paths. And we have Sakam yoga, and then we have Nishkam yoga. And similarly in Bhakti, there's Sakam Bhakti and then Nishkam Bhakti. And then there's Shuddha Bhakti and all these different stages of Shuddha Bhakti all the way to Bhav and Prema. But yeah, I guess maybe in a broad sense, we can say selfishness versus selflessness. Perhaps that's just one short answer, Prabhuji.
Could you say just a little bit about the Lord permitting desires? Because obviously we have desires at every moment of the day, and sometimes we're not even aware of them. But sometimes he doesn't always permit those desires. Sometimes he'll give us something else, or he'll just not give it to us at all. Sometimes he'll permit things that are perceivably that's not good for a person or not good for anyone. For example, it permits, bad things to happen as such, perceivably. But we also recognize him that he loves everyone and he wants everyone to come home. So it's trying to understand that.
Yeah. I guess it's a fine line, right, between because the Lord, yes, he wants to respect our free will so that our love is not forced, and at the same time he does want our ultimate welfare also. That is, I guess, the difficult thing that we in one sense put the Lord into, the difficult situation that we put the Lord into, because he wants our ultimate welfare, but then we are, as errant souls, we have our own desires also, and the Lord, he does choose to let us fulfill those desires. But then, yeah, as you said, that at times he doesn't allow us to fulfill certain desires. That's also there. It's not that everyone gets whatever they desire. I guess there maybe the karmic budget comes into place. Like when I go into a shop, the shopkeeper gives me something based on my choice as well as my budget. Maybe I want something, but then I don't have enough money to pay for it. So then I won't be able to get it, even though I want it. So sometimes, the living entity may want something, but they don't have sufficient karma to earn that. So in that case, they may get a kind of lower version of the same thing, like Prabhupada used to say, right? Someone is very fond of, for instance, swimming in the ocean. So yeah, maybe if they have a very good karmic budget, they may take birth in a very rich family and have a home by the seaside and go swimming every day. Or if they have a lower karmic budget, they may just end up being a fish and swim all day in the ocean. So the desire gets fulfilled, but in a way which is earned by the person, by his karmic budget. That would be one explanation.
Okay, thank you very much, Mataji.
Okay, Prabhu.
Thanks, Prabhu. Yes, Devi Mataji, please go ahead.
Thank you, Satyabhama, and thank you, Gopika Radhika, for yet another wonderful scholarly presentation. So inspiring. But I do have a question on the Paramatma feature of the Lord. As you rightly said, the three forms or levels at which people know the Lord are impersonal Brahmajyoti, the Paramatma feature, and then, of course, the devotee knows the Lord personally in his form of Bhagavan. So those who meditate on the impersonal Brahmajyoti reach the Brahmajyoti. what is the destination of those who are meditators on the Paramatma feature of the Lord? Where do they go?
That's, yeah, actually, I don't know. I don't have a specific answer to this, Mataji. But it's a very interesting question. I'll try to look it up also. Yeah. Thank you for the question, though. Yeah, I never thought of it. I guess maybe if they, maybe, again, I don't want to speculate, but yeah, it's worth looking into.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that.
Scarlett Mataji, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the good class and very, very good class. You talk about desire, and that's what we go through now. It's because we have desired before in a past life, and now we get it. But I give you an example. There is an old woman I know. She lives in the village. She has suffered all her life. She didn't get to keep her children. She gets miscarriages, 5 times miscarriages. Her husband got disability, and she got to take care of him until he died. And now she's an old woman. She doesn't have income. She doesn't have family to take care of her. Sometimes the city authority sometimes help her with medical and so on and so on. Does that mean that she desired that life? Was it her desire to live this life?
Yeah, it's sad to hear this, Mataji. And yeah, I mean, these cases do come up very often. I guess here the explanation would be that, again, like I mentioned to Raj Prabhu, what we get is both is a combination of our desire and also our karmic record. So I may desire a good life, but if I don't have the karmic pious credits to fulfill that good life, then I'll probably not get it. Like if I've committed a lot of sins, then in my next life, I may desire a good life, but I don't deserve a good life. So
but then it wakes a question in the head that is it the soul karmas of the soul, which is in my body now? Is it the soul who's paying the karma? Who is it that paying karma? Is it the soul?
okay,
Because
yeah,
I learned also that soul are pure, soul are good, soul are pure. But whose karma I'm paying? Is it the soul karma I'm paying? Which one?
right. Yeah, that's a very good question, because yes, as you said, the soul is pure. But what happens is, and the soul is not only pure, but the soul is also transcendental to suffering. Actually, we come to know from the Bhagavatam, the soul cannot suffer. Like Krishna says, the soul can never be killed, it can never be burnt, it can never be dried. Like no one can harm the soul in any way. So not only are we pure, but we also, the soul does not suffer. But at the same time, we know that we suffer, right? So
Yes.
why this happens is because the Bhagavatam says this is because of the identification of the soul with matter. So that forms a connection between the soul and the body. And then whatever happens to the body, we experience the suffering as the soul. It's like, like I have a car and I'm very attached to that car. And if that car gets damaged in an accident, so I did not get injured, but I will feel extremely sad. Why? Because I identify with that car. It is my car. And so I'm feeling sad that the car got damaged. In one sense, I'm completely separate from the car, right? There's no connection. I'm safe. I did not get injured. Why am I lamenting that the car got damaged? Because I feel it is my car. There's this sense of identification. If I see someone else's car getting damaged, maybe I won't feel that sad, because there is that identification is not there. That sense of ownership is not there. But when it comes to my car, then I'll get, oh my God, what happened to my car? So in that way, this is the logic which happens, that I am the soul. I have got nothing to do with this body. But whatever happens to the body, I feel the pain because I think this is my body. And this identification, it's so strong that it just just thinking that I'm not this body at a theoretical level, it does not really help. It's a very deep-rooted thing, and it gets overcome over a very long period of time. But the connecting factor is this identification.
But I get also to read and learn. I hope I don't misunderstand it. I even hear the Prabhupada say in his lecture, you kill you killing the soul, or you killing it's suicide, spiritual suicide, and so on. How can you kill soul? Soul cannot die. How can I kill soul? Just because, for instance, now I'm not saying that I don't want to do it. I love this, what I'm doing, reading everything and learning, and I'm not going to finish with it or stop it. I'm going to continue until the day I die. But in the same time, when I want to say it to my children, for instance, that you should do this, you should read, you should understand this and that, because you're going to do spiritual suicide. And then for myself, I don't understand it. How can the soul die? How can I kill soul because I'm not meditating or not chanting or not doing devotional service and so on? How can I kill the soul?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, again, that's a really good question also. And I guess it kind of connects with your previous question, which is that like we said, the soul cannot suffer, but at the same time it suffers because of the identification with the body. Similarly, the soul cannot die, but at the same time, because right now we are in this material world, we are undergoing the cycle of birth and death, right? Again and again. No one wants to die, and still everyone is forced to undergo this experience of dying. So why is this happening? Because even though we are spirit soul, we are in this material body. And therefore, this experience we are having to go through. So that is what it means by spiritual suicide, that yes, although the soul has the potential to be eternal, we are killing that potential. We are not allowing it to be eternal. We are forcing it to undergo the experience of death again and again and again. And that's what it means. So it's, in one sense, it is used in a figurative sense, not so much in a literal sense. It's more in a figurative sense that, yes, like I can say that, okay, maybe someone is a very brilliant student, and if they would have got an opportunity, they could have gone to a very good college and they would have had a very good career. But someone prevented them from doing that, for example. So one can say that, oh, you've killed that person because that person had so much potential and you prevented that person from fulfilling that potential. So similarly, I have a potential as spirit soul, I have a potential to live forever. But if I'm not engaging in spiritual activities, then I'm again and again going through the cycle of birth and death. So I'm again and again suffering the pangs of death, even though I don't have to. I'm actually spirit soul. So I'm not manifesting my potential to be eternal. In that sense, it is said that killing the soul means killing its potential to be eternal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scarlett Mataji. Sorry, Raj Prabhu, there is a question from Namrata Mataji. Is it okay if I just read that? Hare Krishna Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. How do we discriminate when I am doing something for my spiritual growth, but subtly it's sense gratification? Sometimes Maya Devi asks on the test.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very common problem for us sadhakas, undoubtedly, like I can say from personal experience. I guess maybe one thing is that honest introspection helps, just trying to be very honest, at least with ourselves, about thinking about why we are doing what we are doing, and acknowledging, like even if we feel that, okay, yes, there is this material motive behind my devotional service. If I can say that, okay, well, I'm not advanced, so this is me. Right now, I am at this level where I have these material desires. I'm not completely free from these material desires. So it's about just being honest, basically. Like, I don't have to pretend to myself that I don't have material desires. And at the same time, I don't need to be, I don't need to be so hard on myself that I go into depression that, oh, why do I have these material desires? I'm such a nasty person. I should stop doing devotional service. no, like, we can strike a balance between these two extremes. Just we can try to be honest, acknowledge that yes, I have these material desires, and at the same time, I'm trying my best to do devotional service. And because service is all powerful, someday it will elevate even me to the perfectional stage. So basically, yeah, it's about neither pretending to be too advanced, nor nor becoming too discouraged that we are not advanced. We can kind of be honest and just accept the fact that yes, this is the level at which we are, and we'll persevere in the practice of devotional service, and it will elevate us someday.
Thanks, Namrata Mataji. Thanks, Gopika Radhika Mataji. Namrata Mataji, I hope it answers your question. Thank you. So Raj Prabhu, I hope the answer question is small one because we are over an hour. Yes, please go ahead.
You've got time, are you sure? Okay. I'd like to ask a question about the phrase, what was it, Rake Krishna, Madhe Krishna? And there are two questions on that. One of them was, you said, sometimes we hear the word Krishna want to kill you. You use the word destroy, it doesn't really matter, but Krishna doesn't kill or destroy. So what does that mean? And the other question was around, if Krishna wants to protect you, that implies that Krishna chooses to protect. So is it that Krishna chooses to protect, or is it that we, the individuals, that we, the soul, seek out his protection, or a combination of the two?
Yeah, perhaps I would say it would be a combination of the two. Like I remember when I was doing Bhakti Shastri, so one of our teachers gave this example that a small child is trying to lift a big heavy object. And so the father sees the child trying to do that. So the father comes along and lifts it. So why did the father lift it? Because the child was trying to do it. Did the child lift it? No. But why did the object get lifted anyway? It is because the child wanted it. So basically, yeah, it's a combination of the two. Krishna sees our desire and then he facilitates it. So we are not the enablers of that thing, but we set the thing into motion by our desire and our inclination, and Krishna responds to that. That would be. Prabhuji, could you repeat your first question?
First one was around, part of that phrase was, if Krishna wants to kill you, but our understanding is that Krishna doesn't kill or destroy. Even if you use the word destroy, he doesn't destroy anyone.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess our scriptures do use different phrases in different circumstances, and they mean different things. Like in one sense, yeah, we know Krishna is all benevolent and he doesn't harm anyone. And then also in the Bhagavad Gita, he himself says, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam, that to save the sadhus and annihilate the miscreants. So I guess there are basically two sides of the same coin. That yes, Krishna apparently annihilates the miscreants and saves the devotees, but at the same time, because it is Krishna who is annihilating the miscreants, so even the miscreants get benefited. So in that sense, yes, he is all good, but yeah, apparently there is a distinction between his killing and his saving. So in that way, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Raj Prabhu. Very nice questions, everyone. So thank you so much. We'll conclude today's session, Gopika Radhika Mataji. And once again, thank you so much for your time and association. We really appreciate it.
For having me here. It's a privilege and a pleasure to have all of you associated.
Thank you, Gopika Radhika Mataji. Nice class. Thank you.
Vedanta.
Thank you, Mataji.